Good morning. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Youth Veterinarian Initiative, which we call YVI. And our special guest today is Miss Ashley, and it is Hallowell, right? I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
Hallowell. And she is a Penn State student, a four-year student. This is her fourth year as a Penn State student.
Penn student, University of Pennsylvania.
Penn student. Okay. And specializing in poultry. So this is our first speaker that is specializing in our feathered friends. And I'm really excited to have her on since they are truly my passion as far as poultry, with all these chickens and ducks that many of you constantly hear me talk about. So because our show is short, Ashley, I'm not going to go through your bio. I want you to tell us who you are and what you've been doing as a four-year student. And you just take it from there.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm super excited to take the time to talk to you guys about two of my favorite things, and that's food safety and poultry medicine. Like Shrita said, I am a fourth-year veterinarian student at the University of Pennsylvania, but I am a Penn State alum. So kind of figured I'd go through a quick history of myself and then kind of explain some takeaways that I've learned throughout my journey in veterinary medicine. And then I'll kind of move into food safety from a poultry veterinarian's perspective. I was a first generation non-traditional college student. College was a pretty big consideration for my family, and I was the first one to go, so it was an exciting and new experience for me. So I went to Penn State and studied veterinary and biomedical sciences and got a bachelor's degree and graduated in 2013. I didn't go straight to veterinarian school. I really wanted to take time to kind of find out what area I was really interested in and really find my niche before I went to doctorate programs and put myself into a significant amount of student loan debt. So I worked with the United States Department of Agriculture here in the US, doing food safety research on poultry products and other meat products to reduce certain bacteria that we'll talk about a little later. And this position was something called the USDA Pathways program, which is really cool because they offer opportunities for students in high school, students in undergrad, and then recently graduated students programs within agriculture. So that was a year-long program, and I really thought food safety was very interesting. So I decided to continue on exploring this option and went to Aramark, and Aramark is a large food contract company. Some might have heard of it. They supply meals to universities, healthcare, business, big sports stadiums. And that was a really awesome experience. And there I wanted to continue my education in food safety, and they offered to pay for my master's program at Michigan State studying food safety. And I'm very grateful for this program because this is where I really found my passion for food safety and the veterinarian side of things, understanding how veterinarians impact the food supply and the safety of it, especially in the poultry industry. And from that, I was like, okay, I really want to combine my passions with veterinary medicine and food safety within the poultry industry. And then that's when I decided, okay, I'm ready to apply to vet school. And then when I was applying to veterinarian school, there's this program called, again, with USDA called the Malik Scholarship. And this helps pay some of your tuition, and you get to work in food safety and inspection services within processing plants. And that really opened my eyes to a different world of food safety, right? And then now I'm at Penn Vet, fourth year veterinarian student. I'm in clinics, which means I'm in different rotations every 2 weeks, learning different types of medicine. Every once in a while, I get to go out and do externships and really explore. And my first takeaway with my biography is that your path is going to be unique to you. If you're interested in veterinary medicine, a lot of people will get their 4-year degree, or if you're elsewhere, it might just be that you go straight into veterinary medicine as a bachelor's degree. I know that it varies by country, but sometimes you might have to take a break before you do that and kind of explore your options, and that's okay. And it's easy to compare ourselves and conform to what we've seen, but doing where your heart takes you is my best advice. So again, your path is unique to you. And then my second takeaway is go explore all your different options. So as I am a 4th-year veterinarian student in clinics, I'm able to go on something called externships, which is going to different practices, different companies. I've been at Purdue down in Georgia, seeing their processing plants. I've worked in backyard poultry, in case anybody has chickens at home. This little chicken had an egg. An egg was stuck. She couldn't pass an egg. This chicken in the middle here had crop stasis, and I actually got to perform surgery on it, which was a really neat experience. I worked with ducks, and when I was in California, I got to see a squab production facility, which is basically a pigeon, and that was really interesting. So again, make sure you go explore as much as you can see out there. And then
I have a question. How did you know? How did you know that chicken couldn't pass the egg?
There was kind of some tissue prolapse that we saw. So some of that tissue in the vent area was coming through. We did an x-ray on her, and we could see that there was a large egg kind of stuck in the oviduct that wasn't getting passed. She wasn't eating, she was lethargic. So that's how she presented to us.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Backyard poultry is very different from production side of poultry. You get to use all these different types of diagnostics and really kind of explore medicine with them. And it's really fun, and it's really interesting. And I know backyard poultry really exploded during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know a lot of people are looking for vets in that area. And then my third takeaway for today is as you go along your journey, really make connections. If that's, if you're on an externship with another vet student, it's always fun to like kind of hear their experiences, where they've been, kind of what their goals are for themselves. I was able to be a representative for a large pharmaceutical company here, and getting to meet all these students from different universities was great to see what's going on at different colleges. When I worked at Aramark, I was able to work with people from Ireland and China, Belgium, England, and it's great to always understand the different perspectives of things. And as you make these connections, find your mentors, and those are the people that will guide you along the way. A little plug for a nonprofit organization called Possibilities. They are a nonprofit that is geared towards uniting underrepresented groups in veterinary medicine with mentors. You have to be 18 years old to go on the platform, but it is a really great opportunity to connect with people. So that's kind of my background, long story, but I wanted to give you some takeaways on the things you can consider as you move along your own unique journey.
Well, it's really important in what you're doing, especially I was reading something after hearing that you were going to be our speaker, and I was just amazed how much chicken is consumed, not only in the United States, but the world. So someone like you is really important, because for food safety, I mean, we just take it for granted that our food is going to be safe to eat, but without someone like you, no telling what we would be eating, right?
Yeah, there's not too many people interested in food safety, and it's a very important aspect of producing our food, making sure that we, and this is the whole theme of my talk today, is that food safety is all the way from the farm's responsibility to the consumer responsibility. It's not just one part, it's everyone's responsibility to keep our food safe. So, and that's what we're kind of going to transition into right now. And before we do that, I wanted to ask anybody in the audience, like, have you ever experienced getting sick from food before? And like, what did you eat? What do you think made you sick? And like, how did you feel after? So if anybody wants to share their experiences, if they've gone through something called foodborne illness, which we're going to talk about a little bit, let me know.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I was on a cruise once and I ate cheesecake. And within about 5 hours, I started vomiting every hour on the hour. It was horrible. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. I think it was like 2 days before we were supposed to, before the cruise would finish. And I had to fly. When I left the cruise, I had to fly home. And I didn't know, I just didn't know. I didn't know how I was going to make it. I have never been that sick in my life.
It really can knock you down. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. And I'm thinking it was probably norovirus. It's like the number one foodborne pathogen I always think of with cruises.
Okay.
Yeah, norovirus works fast. Usually it's from like a food handler that's sick. And then just not using proper food safety protocols, and then you consume the food and then you get sick very quickly and it always results in the vomiting, even diarrhea. Yeah.
Well, I have out of Chinese food. Now, did it stop me from eating Chinese food? No, because it's my favorite. But yeah. And I figured that it was something, it's usually some kind of bacteria or something that's in the food, right?
Yep. It can be a bacteria, it can be a virus, it could be a parasite. There's lots of different foodborne pathogens. Yeah. So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to what we like to call Bach. He is a harmful bacteria that's found in contaminated food, and that can make you sick. And Bach can make you experience symptoms such as, what we already quickly touched on is that upset stomach, that nausea, that vomiting, diarrhea, fever. And some examples of Bach, we said norovirus. E. coli is a really big one. I've been sick with E. coli before as a kid. Playing on a dairy and then eating raw ice cream right after.
Our young
salmonella.
Guest, Bailey, excuse me, our interrupting, but our young guest Bailey, before you got further, said that she experienced food poisoning once.
Oh no.
She just put that in the chat.
Oh, so sorry. That's what makes this topic so important, right? I mean, it really affects a lot of people, and I have those numbers to share with you too. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that 48 million people here in the United States experience this foodborne illness each year. And then the World Health Organization estimates about 600 million cases on a yearly basis. And it really makes it a significant public health burden. And the most interesting part too is, we say 48 million here in the US and 600 million cases worldwide, but think about, did you guys report your foodborne illness to the health department?
No.
So
I didn't.
Yeah, so it's really underreported. So I mean, the numbers can be more significant than what these estimates are. So I know like the big question that we're going to go through in the rest of the presentation is how do we stop Bach, and how do we fight him, and how do we stop foodborne illness? And we're going to take it in the way we talk about farm to table, but we're going to kind of go from table to farm, because that is how my career path has went. So this kind of gives you a perspective of how I learned food safety, which was really interesting. I kind of worked backwards. And I think the most important part is that food safety really begins with you guys, the consumers. So there's 4 simple steps that you can do at home to fight off that Bach. And the first one is cleaning. We really learned about this one during COVID-19 pandemic, is washing your hands and the surfaces can remove germs like Bach that cause foodborne illness, and making sure to actually wash your hands, right? For 20 seconds. What someone's taught me before is that it's the happy birthday song twice. And that really helps kind of make sure that you're doing the length of time that you need to make sure that your hands are actually clean. And also washing all the items within the kitchen, like your utensils, the cutting boards, the countertops, using hot soapy water. So that's our first one. Our second step that we're going to worry about is separating those foods that are raw from the foods that are cooked. So you don't want any of the bacteria that are on the raw foods to get on any of your already cooked items that you're about to eat, right? That brings us into our third item is to cook. And we want to make sure we're cooking to the right temperature. I don't know how many people own a food thermometer. Very important kitchen utensil that a lot of people don't have, but how do you know your food is properly cooked unless you actually temp it? That's my plug for getting a food thermometer.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If someone is cooking, let's say they're handling chicken, and now they're messing with the seasonings. So they're seasoning, they're touching the seasoning, going back to the chicken. Couldn't that transfer bacteria and then touching the cabinet? And
it certainly can. And I know my hands get so dry all the time because what I do is I wash my hands so many times when I'm in the kitchen that they become very dry. So if I touch chicken and right before I salt and pepper it, I'll wash my hands and then I'll salt and pepper it and then do whatever I need to do with the chicken. But anytime after I touch raw items, I go to the sink and wash my hands. And I think those they have the new sinks that you just wave and do your hands. I think that's really awesome that's coming to market. What a smart idea. And the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they provide a table that tells you what your food should be cooked at. Like chicken should be 165. And I think in Canada, that's 180. So it does vary based on where you are in the world. 180 is a little bit of a dry bird, but if they think that's safe, that's fine. And then our fourth item that we want to make sure of is keeping your refrigerator at 40 degrees. You want to make sure that your food stays at the proper temperature. And sometimes we leave our leftovers out on the counter for a really long period of time, but they really should be in the fridge within 2 hours of being cooked. And then some people like to leave chicken out on the counter to thaw out. What the best thing is to put in the refrigerator to thaw out. So it stays in something what we call the temperature danger zone. You don't want to be between that. So you want to make sure that your food is either below 40 or above the 165 as best as you can. So the next part back, we started the consumers, and now those people that receive the shipments of food and transport the food to your grocery stores, they take really important steps too in making sure that your food stays within proper temperature and is handled appropriately so that it stays safe in that process as well. And that's a little truck moving by. So the step before the distribution would be your manufacturing and processing. This is what I did when I worked with the United States Department of Ag Food Safety Inspection Service. So broiler chickens, which is what we call meat raised chickens, they take about 7 weeks to reach market weight. And then once they've reached that proper size, you have workers come into the barns that are trained in welfare, and they catch them and they transport them to the processing plant. And when they're at the processing plant, birds are inspected by USDA public health veterinarians to make sure that they're really healthy and that they're actually fit for the food supply. And processing plants use a variety of interventions and strategies to fight off Bach. For example, we use chilling, we use antimicrobial rinses to reduce any foodborne pathogens. And we'll also routinely test as well for those bacteria that we kind of talked about in the beginning, Salmonella, Campylobacter, E. coli. And these processes really do make sure that foodborne pathogens stay out of our food. And, you know, once they are processed, there is one more final inspection before they leave the facility. And, you know, and then the poultry products are on your way to your grocery store. So the next phase is the poultry production. This is where I come in right now at stopping Bach at the farm level. And in poultry production, our biggest Bach that we want to tackle is Salmonella. And it does not normally make birds sick. And this is why it's such a tough one to fight, because to our eyes, the birds look completely fine. And then, you know, they go through processing and then get in our food and then we get sick from it. So we really take a multi-hurdle approach on this to prevent Salmonella, and we implement interventions at all stages of production. So that starts with, in this picture would be an example of like a breeder farm. And then at the hatchery, where little chicks get hatched. And then at the grow out farms, where these guys will live those 7 weeks when chicks are placed and then until they're transported.
So about, excuse me, about how old are they when they're ready to become edible?
Usually 6 to 8 weeks for broiler breeders, or broilers, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the grow out farms in particular, Salmonella, you know, is widely distributed in the poultry and in their environment. So we really need to have control programs that consider several factors, and we want to prevent the introduction of Salmonella. That's like our biggest thing on the farm. So we focus on the feed, on the farm environment, and also health management. Feed, water, vehicles, wild birds, rodents, insects, and even you can introduce Salmonella onto a farm. And some of the steps that we kind of focus on is feed at the feed mill should be treated, because we don't want to give them Salmonella from their food. Should be treated to avoid any recontamination of feed with Salmonella. And Salmonella can also be introduced and spread not only through the feed, but also through their drinking water. So we also consider treating water with things like chlorine, organic acids too. And that really supports hygienic water. Interestingly, there's been a lot of studies going on right now about biofilms. And what a biofilm is it's a thin, slimy film of bacteria that really likes to adhere to surfaces. So in these drinking water distribution systems that you'll see throughout your barn, biofilms are like the perfect hiding place for Salmonella, and it can be a continuous source of contamination as well. So a really big thing is regularly cleaning out the water lines and flushing them will really help in removing any biofilms and thus any contamination of Salmonella.
Question, Ashley, about the biofilms.
Sure.
Is Salmonella the only bacteria in the biofilms, or are there other bacteria and the Salmonella are in there with them?
There are other bacteria and Salmonella is in there with them usually. I know there are a lot of studies right now trying to look at how those bacteria interact with each other to create that stable environment, especially in the food processing part of food safety. There was a study recently done about like listeria building a really awesome environment in a biofilm on like refrigerator door handles. Very weird places that you wouldn't expect, right? So biofilms are not just a problem within our water lines, it's problems all over equipment, and they're really hard to get rid of. Yeah. So another way that we can look at reducing salmonella within our poultry environments is litter. Kind of the bedding that you see is also a reservoir for, salmonella contamination. And the way that we reduce salmonella in our litter is we approach it in three different ways. And one way is between flocks. So after they move out, that 6 to 8 weeks, you want to do something called downtime. And that will allow the litter to kind of dry out and hopefully kill any of the bacteria that's in there before you place your new flock. That way that you're not constantly reinfecting another flock with the previous flock salmonella.
Can you tell us exactly what litter is?
Yeah, litter can be, some people use husks, like corn husks, rice hulls. Litter is also just a really nice word of saying poop. So we'll use, the same type of litter for multiple flocks. And they'll turn it out. But yeah. We can also treat the litter by reducing what we call pH in the water activity. And that will reduce the ability for that pathogen to grow. And then third is another way to kind of reduce moisture, I think is our really big factor within this litter that we're talking about right now is something called tunnel ventilation. And tunnel ventilation is where I have a picture of a poultry house later that you'll kind of get a little look of what I'm going to explain, but you'll have systems where exhaust fans are located at one end of the poultry house. And then there are two large openings on the opposite side. And what that does is it brings air through the poultry house and it gets taken back out through the fan. So it's like kind of a wind tunnel. And reducing that or helping with that ventilation really reduces moisture. We also mentioned us bringing salmonella in. So we really want to make sure that only essential visitors that are wearing protective clothing go in poultry houses. In the video I shared, you can kind of see that there was a gentleman walking through and he's wearing those coveralls, he's wearing gloves, even masks and hairnets. And then right before they walk into the poultry house, they'll step in a foot bath to disinfect their boots.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I feel like I'm being so careless with my chickens. I mean,
yeah, I know. Make sure you have a designated boots are a really big one for backyard poultry. If you have like a little pair of boots that you just like keep outside next to them, or if you just have that on the side, that's a good way, a really good way to kind of reduce pathogens in backyard poultry flocks.
Wow.
Yeah. So another way we want to reduce salmonella is discouraging the rodents and the insect traffic in poultry houses. So what you'll see is that there's always a nice clear zone around the house. Like you don't want a lot of vegetation around there because that's a really good way for insects and rodents to gain access. And then finally, another way, lots of ways that we have to tackle this, is enhancing the immune system and the gut health of the birds too. And there's been a lot of different studies on how we reduce the colonization, or another word is how salmonella like sticks in your intestines. And that can be vaccines, probiotics, prebiotics, and organic acids. And just to quickly talk about each of those, vaccines, they increase the immunity to help the bird kind of respond to salmonella, prepares the immune system a little bit. And then we have this competitive exclusion and probiotics. And these are preparations of good bacteria that compete with salmonella in the gut for space or nutrients. So it doesn't allow the salmonella to grow. And then prebiotics are specific nutrients that will allow the bacterial species that are already in the gut flourish and then be more competitive against Salmonella. And then finally, I talked about the organic acids, and this helps increase the acidity of the gut, which can kill the Salmonella. And since other bacteria have like a different susceptibility to the organic acids, you can also increase the ability of the good bacteria to compete against pathogens. And then finally, limiting stress of the birds. You want to really reduce overcrowding is a big one. And that reducing overcrowding can stop them from shedding Salmonella out of their intestines and into the environment. So when we get a flock that moves out of the grow out house, we want to make sure we clean and disinfect. That's a really big one. So I know that was kind of a lot to think about. So
I tell you what, I'm glad I already have my chickens, because I'd probably be afraid to try them after this. I guess I'm doing something right so far, but you're making me think about other things to keep them safe.
Yes, yes.
I didn't even think that I would need to look out for like mice, because I thought the mice would be afraid of my chickens. I haven't had a mouse problem yet in my hen house.
Good, good. Yeah, they love the bedding. They love the food. And they are very good at finding their way in.
And they're not afraid of chickens. Chickens won't keep them out.
Oh, nope. I think sometimes I am wondering if the chickens are more afraid of them.
Wow.
Okay.
And I know I ran through a lot on that previous slide, and what I've learned in my training is this acronym called FLAWLESS. And it really helps me kind of organize my thoughts when I go into a poultry house. And I'll run through that. So the F is for food, which we talked about, you know, the feed coming from the feed mill and being treated. The next is the litter that we talked about, also being treated. And then we talked about air, which was that tunnel ventilation. Water, we talked about those biofilms that we want to get rid of and disinfecting those lines. Lights is more of a layer problem. Like if the lights go out and then all of a sudden, you know, chickens aren't laying eggs, then you think about lights. And then the E is a little bit of an off one, but for me, that's the biosecurity of making sure that when you enter the poultry house, that you're really in proper protective equipment and making sure that rodents are staying out, insects are staying out. That's your big biosecurity topic. Finally, you have sanitation, which we talked about, cleaning in between flocks. And then there's space, which we said overcrowding, stressing the birds out, can also help with reducing Salmonella. So flawless, that's a really big one to remember.
Question, Ashley, when you mentioned lighting, last winter, people were asking me, was I still getting eggs from my chickens through the winter? And I was. Someone told me to make sure they stayed warm, and we put the heat lamps in the coop, and I had them pointed toward where they sit on their perch. And I got eggs all winter. Is it because of that, or is that just in my mind?
I mean, it could be if they if they're greatly impacted with darkness, they will not lay. And certain parts of the world get very dark during the winter, and they don't have enough light exposure to keep in production. You might have noticed that your production was, you were still getting eggs, but it was probably decreased from what you get in the summer, correct? Okay. And that's normal. And that's, we in poultry production use a lighting program so that we maintain a static level throughout the year. So we'll keep lights on from anywhere from 14 to 16 hours a day. Yeah, but winter will definitely.
The heat.
No, I think
it was more so
the lights.
Okay, so I don't need to put heat lamps in there in the winter. They can withstand the cold temperatures.
I think the heat I think that was a really good add-on as well. Birds, their body temperatures run a little warm and they like the warm. So I think the heat lamps was a good add-on as well.
Okay. I was going to say, oh, that'll save me some money.
There are some breeds of chickens that are a little bit more heat tolerant and then cold tolerant too. I can't think of them off my head. I have like a whole book that goes through each breed. I'm trying to think if it's Orpingtons, and they're really good layers. But I can always email you on the side too and be like, these breeds are really good in the winter. You might not have to worry about adding heat lamps, but yeah, there's so many different breeds. It's amazing. I'm trying to learn them all. But this is a picture of what a poultry house looks like. And I just wanted to really emphasize that point of biosecurity. So here's two pictures. The picture on the left is me at a friend's poultry facility. And it's so bad. I'm wearing my own boots in there. I'm wearing my own clothes. I don't have a hairnet on. These are not what you want to go into a poultry house looking like. Bad. Left is bad. Right is good. So in this picture, you can see I have boot covers on. I have my coveralls on, and I have my hairnet on too. So I'm going to have everyone close their eyes and imagine they roll up to a poultry farm. The biggest thing that you're going to do is you're going to get out and you're going to disinfect the tires on that car that you're in. You're going to get back in. You're going to drive up to the poultry house. And then before you exit the car, you're going to put your first layer of boot covers on. And then you're going to get out of the car, and then you'll put your second layer of boot covers on. And then you'll put your coveralls on, and then your hairnet and your gloves. And then right before you enter the poultry house, there'll usually be these little foot baths. They can either be powder or liquid, and you dip your boots in there, and then you go in the poultry house. And then when you're done, you come out and you'll remove one layer of boot covers, your coveralls, your hairnet, and your gloves. And then you'll sit in the truck and then take off that final layer of boots and then spray the bottom of your boots. And that's like the best protocol that you can follow when you go and visit a poultry farm, when you all become amazing vet students and are interested in poultry.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, at least it lets me know that this chicken that I'm going to eat later, I should feel pretty good about chomping down on that.
Right. And it doesn't even stop there. It actually continues even farther back, back to our breeder flocks in the hatchery. So the very interesting thing about salmonella and why it is such an important issue in poultry is that salmonella is transferred through something that we call vertical transmission. So it goes from the mom into the egg, and then a little chick can get hatched with salmonella already colonized. So what we do with breeder flocks is we'll use vaccines for salmonella, which can reduce the likelihood of that vertical transmission. And then the chicks, once they are hatched in the hatchery, they can also be exposed to salmonella just from the environment itself, either by being exposed to infected hatchmates, and then making sure that you have that biosecurity and hygiene programs in place to make sure that they're really cleaning the hatchery. I mean, I've walked into hatcheries that you could literally eat off the floor. They are so beautifully clean, and that's the way it should be. And that's one of the biggest ways that we really tackle salmonella, is starting at the very beginning with our breeder flocks, going to that, making sure that those eggs are salmonella free when they hatch out into chicks.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So I know that was a lot of information about how we really tackle food safety from what we did in a table to farm kind of perspective. From my point of view, we start at the farm. We start at those breeder flocks, and then to the hatchery, and then to the grow out farms. And then once they get transferred to the processing plant, the USDA vets there, and inspectors, and then even the company employees all work very hard to make sure that there are food safety interventions in place. Those people that pick up the food from the processing plants, deliver them to your grocery store, make sure that they're staying at proper temperature. The grocery stores, they all make sure that your food is staying at safe temperatures and are being handled appropriately. And then you at home, I think is one of the biggest takeaways, is that food safety it really, it involves everybody within the production chain. And that's something that I've experienced throughout my career so far, that I've been very passionate about, that it really takes an army, and it takes all of us to make sure that we prevent foodborne illness and really fight off this bacilli from making any of us sick. All right, so I know that was a lot, and I am happy to talk through anything food safety or chicken related. Curious what questions you guys have.
Are there any questions from anyone?
I have a question. This is Monique. I would like to know about free range chickens, because, you know, people talk about, people think that free range chickens might be better because the animals are happier, you know, it's less cruel, quote unquote, to have your chickens running around in a yard or something, as opposed to being in a facility the way that you showed us. So can you talk about any differences? First of all, do you believe that that's true? And secondly, for the free range chicken producer, what does the veterinary intervention look like?
So free range is definitely tricky, and there's been a lot of conversation between like the organic side of things and the conventional side of things. And my point of view about which one's better is honestly, as long as the health and prevention strategies are there, it really is based on the farmer and what capabilities they have. Free range definitely brings a lot of challenge, especially to veterinarians when it relates to health. Being out and exposed to the environment that way doesn't really allow us to control a lot of things. One of the biggest things that comes to my mind is high path avian influenza. It's not a food safety concern, but it is a devastating economical concern for the poultry industry here. And flocks.
So that's bird flu, right?
Yes, yep. And flocks will get exposed from migratory pathways of other birds flying within that area is really big. Ducks and waterfowl can carry avian influenza and show no symptoms. So like these free range facilities, if they're near water and ducks are flying by, and they might even have bird flu and they shed it, that can really impact those producers. There are other things too to think about. There's like Newcastle disease, infectious coryza, mycoplasma. These are all really a lot of diseases that we've been able to control within the conventional setting that really bring a lot of challenge in the pasture-raised poultry production systems. There are some companies out there that have been able to really hybrid model it, where they have access to the outdoors, but they're not completely pasture raised, and they can go out, graze, and then come back into the house if they choose. I think it's going to be a lot of trial and error if people really want to go through that way. People talk about animal welfare, but if you have a system that's really impacting their health with all these diseases that are really hard to control, I mean, that's also a really significant animal welfare issue, right? So it's a really hard conversation. I think another really big thing is consumers are getting really far away from their food. There was a study through Michigan State that kind of showed that gap between consumers and producers. So a lot of people don't understand what really goes into animal production and all the things that have to be considered. You know, like they think pasture raised is great and they want to see chickens running outside because that's what they think chickens should do. But there's not a lot of knowledge on all the diseases and health challenges that they get exposed to, and the costs that it takes to really intervene there. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I think that's going to be an important point for anybody who's listening to this recording.
Yeah.
And I Ashley,
Vega.
Hi, Dr. Vega.
Hey, good. I am sorry that I was late to the start of this, but I have to tell you that this was a great talk for me for a couple of reasons, and I think it's important to call it out to Bailey and other young people who may be listening to, or when they will listen to this recording. I think it's fantastic, your talk about saying how you got to veterinary medicine, because you don't have to go straight from college to veterinary medicine. You can take the time to learn other things and really figure out what you want to do, or like in the case of your career, you did a couple of side gigs and your master's, and you figured out that you really wanted to be a poultry veterinarian and you wanted to be into food safety. So thank you very much for pointing out that to kids in terms of that there's more than one way to get there, and you can do a lot of fun things before you get there to figure out what you really want to do. I think the other thing I really love about your talk is that through the Youth Veterinary Initiative, one of the things that we've been talking about is how veterinary medicine, you can do more than just dogs and cats, right? And so you're talking about being a veterinarian to poultry, but in your talk, you were talking about bacteria, you were talking about food safety, you were talking about all of the different things, all the different parts of science, right? Both for animal health and human health that make veterinarians awesome. I mean, right, we do a little bit of everything, not just, people medicine, veterinary medicine. I think that part was awesome. So thank you for bringing that out in your talk as well. And I think it's been a really good thing for Bailey and the other kids to see that there's a lot of stuff you're going to do here. You're not just going to give vaccines. You're not just going to spay cats and dogs. You got to think about everything as a scientist. And then I think the other thing that I really love about your talk is that you've showed how veterinary medicine is involved in some place that people would never even think about. Right. And so it really does, back in the 80s, when we were trying to get people excited about veterinary medicine, there was a little slogan that said veterinary medicine, a career of choices. And I think you're a perfect example of how there is choices. And so I hope that young people listening to this will be able to think to themselves, wow, if I go to become a veterinarian, I really do have a lot of ways to make my career go in there. I think you've done an awesome job of illustrating that. So thanks for that too.
Thank you. Yes, I hope it kind of gives a different perspective on all the options that are out there. I honestly, when I first wanted to do veterinary medicine, wanted to do small animal emergency, and then discovered this food safety thing, and I had to explain to a lot of people how veterinarians impact food safety. Had a lot of raised eyebrows, but we do really play an important role. And I just want to share kind of that mission and hope to maybe get someone else interested in it too one day.
Yeah, it's great. Great.
So happy you could join us, Bailey.
Oh yeah, me too, Dr. Vega. I have a couple of questions, but I didn't want to override anyone else that may have a question. Anyone else?
Bailey, do you have questions?
Well,
come off mute, Bailey.
Miss Bailey, no question.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear anything. And if the food that you have is in the refrigerator and it's separated still and you leave the refrigerator open, could it get bacteria on it?
So if you, a really good point. If you leave the refrigerator open just for a couple minutes to go fill up a glass of water in the sink or something, that's not a concern. Big concern is if your power goes out and then your refrigerator loses power and then doesn't have that temperature. It takes about 6 hours for your food to go bad, if that gives you an example of how long it really takes for that to impact kind of the food safety and quality. So leaving it open for a little bit won't be too bad, but if you have a power outage for a few hours, that might be of a concern.
And another question. So if the power goes out, it went out a few months ago and there was a freeze here in Texas, and the temperature was freezing. And so we just put our food outside it's already cold. Is that okay?
I had a lot of friends do that, where, you know, if it gets really cold and it's outside is below 40 degrees, that's fine. You can totally do that as long as it's in maybe a container, and away from any of the outdoor environment, and packed appropriately. As long as that food stays within that, below 40 degrees, that's totally acceptable. Yeah, definitely think about doing that in sticky situations.
Any other question? You know, having the backyard, well, we're here on our homestead and we're new at this. I've been learning as I go. I saw earlier where you had the eggs, and it looked like there were maybe marks on them, but I've been dating my eggs, so that I can eat those that are the oldest, or even when I'm giving them to my neighbors, to mark them with a Sharpie. Do you know if that's bad or not? Because I've been looking online and some people are saying it won't affect the eggs and some says it might.
Yeah, so there are I'm trying to think if it's NSF. There is a company that makes like food safe permanent markers that, like, when I worked back at Aramark, we required all of our locations to use those in case the Sharpie marker bled through any packaging. So there are food safe markers out there. I don't know like the technical science between permanent markers on certain food products. But I think there is a concern for those chemicals in that marker to bleed through and affect maybe quality versus food safety, being a chemical hazard. But there are food safe markers out there that you can use.
Okay. Well, I will look for those. And then my next question is, someone told me, because I want female, now that I have one male duck, I want female ducks. And we have an incubator. And someone told me that if I keep the incubator on a higher temperature, that can control whether it's male or female. Do you know if that's true?
I honestly don't. That's a really interesting question that I honestly don't have the answer to. But I actually kind of want to look into that. I feel like I remember hearing about studies, not in ducks though, about that, to control like the different way that you could potentially gain one sex over the other. But that's something definitely interesting to look into. I don't have the answer.
Okay. Well, you know what? I was hoping, but it's almost like people ask. I do grant writing, and people ask me all these questions, and I don't know everything, even though I study this field. So I just thought I would throw it out there, because if that was the case, I'll have that booger cranked up, I tell you.
Bailey says if you have alligators, that will happen.
What was the question?
Say that again.
Bailey has put into the chat that if you have pet alligators, that will happen. About the incubator.
Monique, you're getting this buzzing when you talk. Say that one more time.
Okay. Bailey says in the chat that if you have pet alligators, that will happen. And I'm wanting Bailey to come off her mute, so she can talk about whether she's talking about incubating alligators.
Well, so when they lay eggs and stuff, they bury them underground. And if it's colder outside, or I can't remember if it's colder, if it's hotter, it depends on like what gender you give. Because I think if it's hotter outside, then you'll get more females, and if it's colder, then you'll get more males.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Bailey.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that.
I remember trying to read studies about that topic, but I never knew if it was valid results.
Yeah, and Bailey's exactly right. We also see that in turtles. If you, depending on the temperature at which you incubate the eggs, you can influence the gender. And now I have homework the way you do. I'm going to run in to see if they've done any of that research in chickens and other poultry.
Yeah.
But I know that in amphibians and some reptiles, it works that way.
Gotcha.
So interesting.
Oh, I think Shrita.
Shrita, are you there?
I think she's
You're on mute.
on
Let me
mute.
unmute myself. I just want to thank you. I'm sorry, my dogs were barking and I had muted. I want to thank you again, if there are no other questions, but just this presentation has been so informative and scared the bejesus out of me right now with my chickens. I need to do better, but it's still a good thing. And I just want to thank you again for sharing this, and I'm excited to get this out to our network you're recording. Is there any last comments or information that you would like to share with us?
I have to say I'm very grateful for the pathway that I've taken. I know that it's been windy and at times very frustrating, but I mean, that's just sometimes the way that it is. And I think accepting that and allowing you to let your life take you where it goes is kind of the best advice that I can give. Like I said, you always want to try to conform and do things the way that you see other people do it, but just follow your own unique path, and it'll take you where you need to be.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Well, if you guys will allow me, I am so excited when we first hatched our first ducklings. Can I just share with you when I first saw it hatching in our incubator?
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me see if I can do that real quick.
Do you need me to stop sharing?
I think it will allow us both to, I think it will allow me to do it, I think. Let's see.
While Sharita's looking for that, Bailey, can you come off mute and tell us whether you received the books we sent you?
I don't think we've gotten them yet because we haven't checked the mail in a while, so it may be in there, but I don't think we have them yet.
Okay. Let us know when you get them. Please email us.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I had sent her a message earlier in the chat and I told her to text me her address because if I sent it to the wrong place, I wanted to make sure that I, make it right.
Okay.
So let's see, share. Okay, do you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
It's telling me that my screen is sharing.
There you go.
It's starting now.
I stopped sharing mine. I think that helped.
Now we can see it.
Okay. Okay. We have a duckling coming. Maybe one. Oh, look. You would have thought I was 5 years old and nobody else had hatched before. That we wouldn't get anything, but oh my gosh. So this is awesome. Our first duck coming out of the incubator. Let's see if I can just kind of scroll. Let's see. Okay. And you guys, I was asleep, but my dog Harley, he's the one, he loved hearing them in the incubator. So he starts barking and that made me get up and so I was able to capture it. But I just was so excited. Let's see if I can, here we go. And what I didn't realize is in our incubator, the duck eggs are so huge, even though this turns it with the chicken eggs, the duck eggs are too large and they didn't. First duckling. And they didn't turn it. Oh my goodness. So I only, out of the 22 eggs, we only got 3. So I know now that I need to manually turn them because they're really too big. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share that. And that's the kind of thing that we hope to do with our local youth and those, time it so that they can see them at the time when it happens. So again, let me come out of that and I'll stop share. So thank you again. Ashley, You really are a great presenter, and we can tell that you have been an absolutely phenomenal 4-year student because you know your stuff. And thank you everyone else for being on, Danielle and Felix, and oh wait, something else is playing. Let me turn that off. That's not cool. That's our rooster renegade. Sorry. And everyone, thank you so much. I'm excited about this program. When Monique and I first started talking about it and just talking about the possibilities, there have been some amazing things that are starting to happen, and we appreciate that all of you are involved. And Bailey, no matter what, your involvement, your continual support of the program as a young person, we really are grateful for you. And I'll check and see what's going on with those books. I may just go in and mail again, and that's why I asked you to send your address, because if they're taking this long, I mean, that's just a little ridiculous. I must have done something wrong. But what we will do also, Ashley, is I will make sure that you get my link and also Monique's link so you can see our previous episodes. We would love to have you on again. So if you think of any other presentations that you would like to share with our community, we welcome you. And Monique, is there anything else you would like to say before we cut off?
I just want to say, yay, Penn. Yay, Penn, yay, Penn. Felix and I are Penn grads, and you are soon to be a Penn grad. And anytime I can just give a shout out to the school, I love to do that. And I'm just thrilled that you're now part of the YVI community, and we'll be checking in with you and inviting you back. And we hope that you will spread the word about us and what we're doing as well. I want to say that it was extremely important for me to hear that you are a first-generation college student, because that's also a characteristic, if you will, of people who we're reaching out to. We're reaching out to youth. They're not actually in college yet, but a lot of our youth will be the first person in their family who goes to school, who goes to college. So that's really important for people to understand as well.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all, everyone. We've been an hour. I'm so glad that you guys don't mind when we run over. We've always said it was going to be a 30-minute program, but when you're interesting like Ashley, it just goes over. So
That's
again,
right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ashley, our special guest speaker. And we look forward to you coming on and sharing with our community again. For everyone else, have an absolutely phenomenal weekend. And loving an animal today will make you have a brighter tomorrow. Everyone, have a great weekend.
Bye. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.